Hello and welcome to this video. On this video we're going to be talking about how to clean and reinstall the climate control servo on a 2002 Lexus GS 300. So the problem that we have with this car is on both the driver and passenger side, the servos are doing what we call hunting. So there's a relative feedback encoder right here that it gets dirty over time and gets a lot of copper in the grease, and then it becomes conductive, and then the servo can't find itself. And so what you have is the servo doing some hunting. And we'll talk about that more later in the video, and we'll also tell you how to get this piece out. We didn't go through step by step from the beginning because we've actually never done one of these before. So we're learning ourselves. So this just snaps apart, and make sure when you snap it apart that you don't drop the gears or anything. And what we're going to do now is we're going to clean this grease off right here and on the little copper fingers that contact it, and then we're going to re-grease it with a non-dielectric grease. So we'll get that cleaned up here in a second, and then we're going to come back and then I'll figure out what kind of grease we're going to use. So we've got this all cleaned up now, and I need to put some grease on it. And so what I'm going to use is I have this old container of Lubriking. It's made by Tech Spray. I was going to either use that or Krytox grease, both of which are non-conductive. And this is something I used to use a lot with home and car audio equipment for lubricating exactly this type of stuff. So what we'll do is take a little bit of lubricant and we'll dab it all on here really well and get it nice and greased up, but not too much grease, just enough to give it a light coating. So I'll get that all done, and then I'll show you how it looks after I'm finished. Okay, so basically we've got this all lubricated now, and so now we're going to snap it back together. Probably I'm going to have to flip the motor over here where the contacts are and get the worm gear all associated with this gear, and then I'll be able to put it back together. So it just snaps together. So if you're careful, it shouldn't be a problem. Now that I've cleaned the servo and I'm reinstalling it, I want to explain a little bit how we got it out. So this is on the driver's side. There's a little panel underneath that you have to take out. And what you have to do is take out one screw on each side, and then you have to use a pry tool and pry this little piece loose here, and then push here and pry that loose. The whole thing will drop down in the front. Then the OBD2 sensor or connector, you have to take it loose from underneath, and then there's a light bulb that goes in here. You have to twist left and take it out, and there's a hole here where the cable attaches. You have to take that out. It's pretty self-explanatory, and then the whole thing should just drop out and you can take it out, and installation will be the reverse of that. So we'll get that done, and then we'll talk some more about going to the other side and working on it. Okay, I wanted to take a minute to explain why we took the driver's side servo off and why we're going to take the passenger side servo off next. So on these older Lexus units like this, they start doing this hunting problem because the servos, there's two kinds. There's relative and incremental. And in this case, it's got a relative position servo, which gives feedback to the temperature control unit to tell how the vents are positioned. And so when it starts hunting, the vents start going back and forth, trying to open and close and move the air around in different ways. So like right now we have it on a certain temperature, we have it on the heat, and if we turn it all the way down cold, it should respond accordingly. And on the driver's side it does now that we took it apart and cleaned it. And on the passenger side we'll need to fix that. But what you typically hear is a click, 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 click sound, and it can vary from a lot of clicking, like click, 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 or just an occasional click, 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 and then it might settle down after a while. And if you turn the temperature all the way down to 65 or all the way up to 85, it should stop cycling. So that's kind of what the symptoms are with this unit needing to be cleaned and rebuilt or replaced, depending on how bad it is. And so I just wanted to interrupt the video and talk about that. And then now we're going to go over to the passenger side and work on it. So on the driver's side, you had to pull that lower plate out, and then the servo was way up inside, and we couldn't get any good pictures of it. So we just thought we would make a quick video to describe what we're doing. So with no further ado, we'll move to the other side. This is the piece on the passenger side that goes down below the glove box. It comes off pretty easily. All you got to do is undo these 3 clips. It was pretty easy for us because the dealer only had 1 clip in place and the rest of them were just hanging in there. So that was one of our sources of a rattle, by the way. So we actually took the clips out of the car and put them in here properly. So this is cleaned up and ready to go. The next thing we did is we took the glove box out. I'm going to show you that here. To get the glove box out, you're going to take 3 screws out that are like this, here, here, and here. And then there's 2 10mm bolts. They look like this. They go underneath. Then you're going to have to unfasten the all the various, like there's airbag cables here and stuff. Got to be real careful with those because you don't want to set off the airbag. So if you're concerned, disconnect the negative on the battery and let it sit for a couple of minutes before you work on it. Otherwise, just be very careful and not disturb any of the airbag connections. So you also have a couple of clips on the top here, and they just simply unclip and come out. So it's pretty easy to get out, and then now we're going to go back in there and remove a few more items. This is the passenger side servo unit. So we got it out so far successfully. Now to get this out, you're going to have to take a few things off. There's a bracket that holds some connectors or connector assembly together. You have to take this big plastic thing loose. We actually had to cut the tape here because we couldn't get behind it to take it loose. And so when you get in there, you'll see that you have to take a lot of things loose, and then you can wheedle this out very carefully. We didn't have to do any major disassembly, but it did take us about an hour to get to the point where we could get this out. Now, there's probably easier ways to do it, maybe taking out the whole blower assembly and lots of other things. But our biggest problem was to get to the screws for this servo unit. They're actually located pretty much behind some of the piping for the heating. And you can very carefully get in there and work the screws out, but it takes a while. So with having said that, we're going to rebuild the servo now. So we placed a mark on it to show the relative position of the arm. And so we'll take it apart now and clean it up. To clean the passenger side servo and relubricate it, you're going to have to actually take the motor out. So what you want to do is mark the motor because it's polarity sensitive. And so if you get it in the wrong direction, it'll try to servo incorrectly. So we did that, took the motor out, got underneath the encoder wheel and cleaned it really, really well with some wipes. We turned at a 45-degree angle or so. And then we reapplied some of this lubricant, which is non-conductive. So we have this all ready to pop back together. Then we're going to reinstall it. We're considering exchanging the Phillips heads for like Allen head screws, if we can find the right ones in our stock, because it's just such of a pain to get to this. I don't know why Toyota didn't use Allen heads in the first place. So we're going to put that together, and then we'll come back in a little while when we've got everything kind of put together and talk about how everything went. And then also I just wanted to give you one more reminder. Any of the yellow cables underneath the dash, you never disconnect them. Those are all airbag cables. If you need to move them or disconnect them, you're going to need to take the battery negative terminal loose for a few minutes first. So having said that, we found no reason to unplug any of the yellow cables. All we did was just took them loose from the glove box unit itself. So that's all we had to do, and everything is cool. So we'll put this back together, reinstall it, and then like I said, we'll come back and talk about some of the things we ran into, and hopefully this will make your job a little easier if you decide to do this. Ideally, you would just put brand new units in, but they're really, really expensive. So we're trying to avoid that. Okay, so we're ready to finish assembling it now. We're not going to show you all that because this was only meant to be sort of a guideline, but we did get the passenger side servo back in. We did test it with the air conditioner. It has stopped doing the mooing of the cow or chattering or the hunting, that's the clickety-click sound that you might hear. Some of them actually make a mooing sound. So we got rid of all that, and we don't know how long it'll hold up, hopefully for a few more years. We're going to put it all back together, and it was a pretty tough job. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it was an 8. So if you do it, have fun, and thanks for watching.